Hey everyone, happy 2018 and welcome to TONKOCAST number 20.
20.
20.
20.
20.
20.
That's what I said.
So, as a part of a New Year's tradition, our first TONKOCAST is a conversation among the Tonko's leadership.
Starting last year, right? You guys asked me to interview the three partners, and we talked about the year past and what to expect the year ahead.
That was fun.
Enjoy!
Here with the guests of TONKOCAST number 20. Oh, my name is Courtney Lockwood, and I will be interviewing the guests of TONKOCAST 20.
That is Tsutsumi.
Zen Miyake.
And Robert Kondo.
Yes, our fearless leaders. Generally, let's talk about 2017 and what has been different, or what was different about 2017 than the years before.
Well,
and specifically, what projects did we work on in 2017?
I guess this was our year 3, and we had a big team between Berkeley studio and the studio in Tokyo. And that was probably the biggest difference. I'm sure there are a lot of other things. In terms of specific projects.
Yeah, we worked on the Dam Keeper Poems, which is 5 minutes of 10 episodes of a 5 minutes series. And that was a 2D animation, and that was released through Hulu.
Now that we're in 2018, I'm like,
I forgot everything. Yeah, totally.
But our book came out, our graphic novel, book 1 came out. We had completed it almost in the year prior, but we're happy to see its release in August of last year. And yeah, I think, 2017 versus the years prior, I think, like Dice said, we're the biggest we've been. But also, I think there were certain projects there were certain expectations I think we had this time last year that 2017 was like, that's it. This is the year. Everything's going to be exploding out of Tonko House. And some things did. A lot of explosions. But I think that, there's some things too that I think we didn't get to move forward in the fashion we wanted to. Certain expectations we had of ourselves that, we can really push forward on. And not all bad things. Everything happens for a reason. But I think that, I think by now I thought, I don't know, I just thought that we'd be, with our feature film, for instance, I felt like, oh my gosh, by the end of the year, just out of naivete, like, we're going to be, like, in the middle of, like, making our film and doing all these things. And because of that, I think, it's a lot more complicated than that, I'm realizing. And so, yeah, that was, I think, a little bit of a difficult part of 2017, for me, at least.
We called last 2017 in our presentation at CTN a year of struggle. And, we don't want to say it in a negative way, because struggle is where you learn and grow. So it was all positive, but it was definitely a hard year for all of us. Because of the expectation that we set in the early, starting 2017, and as the year went by, we realized that expectation wasn't quite being met. And that was hard, but at the same time, we had pleasant surprises too. So that was also an incredible advancement of this company, that we felt that there are things that we didn't expect that actually helped this company grow.
Yeah, I mean, I think having the Hulu project was...
The Dam Keeper Poems.
Yeah, the Dam Keeper Poems was an incredible project to have in-house. And Eric O was directing it. It's the first time that we had content that Dice and I were not directing. And there was a lot of things that were scary about that. It was kind of a bit of trusting someone else with Tonko House name and characters. And of course, who better to trust than Eric, who was our supervising animator on the original short. But also, directing is a lot more than just the creative aspect of it. It's also, leading a team and finding ways to fit within so many parameters that you face when you have a project. And I think what we didn't expect is that how amazing Eric would be at it, but also how much that team would come together to support itself and each other and to really support Tonko House in a way. And we had a lot of animators in-house. We had Tonko, who was animating down in LA. We had an animation team out in Japan. And for all of these things now, looking back, to really come together and work required a lot of planning and scheduling and logistics. But I think at the end of the day, the will to make something unlike anyone had made individually, but to make something together, that will, I think, overall was so clear. And in a way, I feel like that was what really helped us because, especially Dice and I were creatively sitting outside of that project. So to watch someone else like Eric make something was both really refreshing, but also it made me really jealous, at least. Like, oh my gosh, I want to be there working with Eric on this project, and I want to draw on it, and I want to make stuff. And but it was really fun to watch, and it really felt like the growth of Tonko House was the ability to trust other people in 2017 with so many things that we could not do on our own, I guess.
And we always talked about creating Tonko House instead of saying Tonko Studio. Like, we wanted to make it a house where people come and play and just be comfortable, but then experiment and feel at home. But actually doing it is not that easy. Like, letting other people handle your characters and your story or your world, and Eric did it beautifully creatively. But I gotta say, the one thing I'm curious to ask Zen is that also trusting you, Courtney, in particular, and also the team who was trying to figure out the logistics and schedules and the budget. Unlike, we all come from big studios, and we never had to deal with a lot of things we had to deal with on this project. And there's so, like Robert said earlier, we had so many explosions during this journey of this production, and every time we had to figure out how to make it work financially, how to make it work logistically, or making sure people are happy. It was an incredible learning curve for all of us, but I'm curious to hear Zen's point of view.
Yeah, so first of all, Courtney did an amazing job. Throughout the year, but especially on this DK Pong project. And we also had, for the production part of it, we had a counterpart in Japan, Kazu. He was the production coordinator for this project, and he did amazing job as well, along with Courtney. And the difference between our collaboration with the studios in Japan prior to this project, we had an experience working on Moon, and we did the DK feature animation test animation project with Anima in Tokyo. We always had this kind of counterpart studio, and we had a production team on those studios. Like, Anima had the production team, and for Moon, we worked with Crafter or Steven then, and Maza, and they had their production team. And creatively, Dyson and Robert were leading the team and all that. But production-wise, they actually made those kind of platform, and they were kind of they're the one kind of coming up with the budget and schedule and all that. This time, we were doing it all ourselves, and we were hiring all the production people in Japan as well. And communication between Courtney and Kazu was happening all the time, and all that was like a new experience. And also running the 2D animation project itself was brand new project.
All of us,
for all of us. So we have like a multiple layer of those kind of challenges. But in that kind of environment, I just kind of I just feel that Courtney and Kazu really did an amazing job.
Well, thank you. It was, and I do want to talk maybe a little bit more about, our collaboration with artists in Japan and that relationship that we have continued through the years, and especially dealing with these quote-unquote remote productions, because at the end of the day, Hulu never really felt like the remote productions that the other ones that I've worked on. Like, it very much felt like there was a central heart there. Can you guys talk about maybe how you fostered that, or maybe even how you guys saw it and from the outside, and see maybe where that comes from?
Yeah, I think that I think that has a lot to do with how you and Kazu work. Kazu actually came over and spent some time with us before really diving into any project with us, and Kazu got to sit and observe how Tonko House works, the inner workings of Tonko House and how we function and what we care about. Spent time with Eric to see what Eric really cared about. And I think that in the end, we started that production without anyone from Tonko House really going over to Japan. And so for a long time they worked that way. So Kazu was really kind of creating the culture of that group over there. And what was nice is, I think, the kind of playfulness on this side. For instance, we would send messages or little gifts, things like that, and it kind of created this back and forth between our studio and their studio in Japan, that we would kind of exchange messages or exchange gifts or things like that, and there would be kind of a bit of a playful nature to the relationship. But ultimately, too, Eric did go to Japan, and I do think, too, that made just seeing firsthand the impact that it had, that interaction and the inspiration that some of the team in Japan got from working with Eric directly also was, I think, pretty impactful. But I think in the end, a lot of these things are pretty straightforward. They're human relationships and how people talk to each other, communicate with each other, treat each other. I'd like to think that everyone here is pretty respectful and admire the talent in Japan. And so the best way, I think, to show admiration is to actually utilize people's talents and skill sets. And I'd like to think that had a big part of creating a relationship between the two groups. And ultimately, at some point in the future, it'd be great to get them all in one room, even if it's for fun. And because a lot of the people on the team never met each other, which is kind of a bummer, actually, because I think everyone would gain from that.
I mean, it's a first step. Like a lot of times when you're working with a group from another culture, is not at all just about the language barrier, and it's always like we have to take steps towards where we want to be, as opposed to like everything will be exactly the way we want, because we have to respect the way they're used to working, but also introducing our way, so hopefully they like something they've never experienced before. For example, I remember animators in Japan, a lot of the cleanup animation was done in Japan, and they were actually done by some of the top animators coming from Studio Ghibli or Studio Chizu, but they wanted to work on this project, even as a cleanup, and that says a lot about like their curiosity of like how we work on the west state side. And then when Eric kind of sat down, just kind of worked with them side by side, and he wrote the handwritten letter to each individual over there. There are animators crying because it's not common in Japan to have that kind of interaction between directors and animators, and then whereas here, coming from Pixar, like directors and animators, they always have this kind of a dynamic, and so I would like to think that we're stepping towards that sort of best of both worlds at some point. But definitely there are things that we could have done better. But also, when I saw how they reacted to how Eric and you interacted with them, and it was really rewarding to see from outside. Like, we were involved just a little bit, but just to see the sparks in their eyes, and then how they continue to express their desire to work with us again in in the future. That's exciting. And it's not like we knew how to do this, but we kind of, like Robert said, we just went with the human instinct of like how we want to be treated and how we want to work with other people. And of course, there are a lot of mistakes we made, but also I feel like there are a lot of wins too in that process.
Yeah, everybody voluntarily worked more than they studied, working on, of course, like someone like JJ, started working as one artist, but really take up a lot of things on the project. And Toshi, for example, he was really fitting in so much of the communication and on the creative side and technical side and everything. And without having him, communicating what we need on our side in the U.S. and then what they need in Japan. Without his help, I don't think we could make it happen. So I think everybody really look at the situation and think hard on what is the kind of best move every day. And I think through all those kind of constant effort, I think we could actually make this project happen.
And I think the three of you guys definitely, I think, paved the way and let Eric and myself and the whole other team make mistakes and fail and do it in a way that it was encouraged as to, okay, what can we learn from this rather than being reprimanded, which it's easier said than done. So thank you guys. So Dam Keeper Poems is finished and we are now screening it at a couple studios.
We're nominated for
an Annie Award. But the next, what Robert touched on also a little bit about what's in 2017 was our work on the feature film.
Yes. So the reason why we call it a year of struggle is, especially me and Robert, creatively, we were heading this Dam Keeper feature project, working on the script, and we actually started storyboarding some sequences, and while you guys are working on the Dam Keeper poems, me and Robert were really trying to get this feature project off ground, because that's the biggest dream project that we set out to do. And we we thought in the beginning of 17, we thought by the fall of 17 we were going to be doing a lot of pre-production work. One of the biggest things that we learned was, first of all, contract. It just takes time. Basically, we came to agree on the big terms with 20th Century Fox the year of 16, summer of 2016, and then it took us about a year to actually close the actual contract. That's probably normal. We did not know that. In the meantime, in 10 months, Eric finished from nothing to completion of the production of the Hulu series, the Dam Keeper Poems, in 10 months. So it kind of tells you how different of a speed it is to work on a big project like the Dam Keeper feature. So that was one big step that we just didn't anticipate. Also, I think creatively, this is probably creatively the hardest year I've ever had in my career. I think that doing a feature project is a lot more about revealing who you are as a person than I expected. It's not like this external journey of exploring characters or exploring some sort of world you created. It's really about digging deeper into the fabric of who we are as people and the kinds of story we want to tell and the kinds of characters we want to create. For the first time in a really long time, I just found myself doubting myself at the end of 2017, and
Not that I don't doubt, I sound like really cocky, right? I don't doubt myself ever. It's not that, but I think like really questioning, almost the only time I can really think about myself questioning so deeply was at the start of Tonko House as to whether or not should I start on this adventure. And so in that way, I feel like it's 2018 is really this moment where I feel like we're coming out of that. At the end of 2017, there were some dark times, I feel like, just because it was a struggle. And I think those parts are really necessary in building a film and building an honest film. And I think but it's a piece that I was like, oh, we can avoid this. Like, we can just go and make the film that we want to make that's entertaining and fun. And actually, the reality of things is that you have to face off with some of the demons as far as the story you want to tell and the characters you're capable of creating, and how honest they can be and how deep they can be. Because I think you can create surface characters that on the surface work great, but in terms of characters of depth, I think that's where really it takes a lot more. So, I think not to make it sound all doom and gloom, but I think that it was a big year. As much as it was struggle, like you said, Dice, I think it was also growth. I think, just whenever you realize your kind of limitations, it's not a pretty moment. It's not you're like, hey, this is all I can do, awesome. It's kind of like, oh, this is all I can do, and so in that way too, I think the other theme of this year has really been relying on other people. Learning to open up and let other people help you where you can't push anymore, and so in that way, we have a writer that we've been working with. We've got our producer Kane, who's really been kind of a guiding light for us, and all the folks down at Fox who have been incredible partners, and everyone here in the studio that's really been helping us to move along in every space and way they can. Yeah, the feature film is still absolutely at the heart of everything we're doing, and I think we still I feel like I believe in it more than ever, and we're really excited to share it.
So there were, like Robert said, we don't want to paint a doom and gloom picture, but this year was hard, I think, for everybody here at the studio, and there were some amazing moments, and there were some just moments where we all questioned ourselves and our capabilities. But what is it that I also got to witness these moments where you guys came out of the darkness, and what is it that you guys each personally, how do you guys get out of that? Or even if it's not something conscious that you do, what helps you get out of those under that dark cloud?
I think, without sounding cheesy, it is the fact that we had each other. It would have been really hard if it was just by myself, or even if it was just me and Robert, just two of us. I think everybody really contributed to kind of help us come out of that sort of dark moment last year. When we were struggling, to see Eric and his team just create such a beautiful, beautiful story out of the Damn Keeper world, that was one big inspiration, at least for me. I just want to make it. I know, if we make it, at least we'll learn through that process. But we're almost kind of creating this rabbit hole, within ourselves. It's not like anyone was telling us kind of do anything. Our partners have been so flexible and supportive of our journey that, in a way, the darkness last year that we faced was more of something that we created ourselves almost. But just seeing what it is to make a film, what it is to share a story, what it is to create, that just kind of put me back to oh, this is why I started this whole thing. I wasn't trying to prove to anybody. I wasn't trying to be famous. I wasn't trying to make money. I just wanted to tell a story. I just wanted to share my story and our stories, and that really got me excited. and really helped when I was really going through a hard time. I needed Robert to kind of back me up, and I needed Zen to back me up, and I needed you guys to back me up, and I think we kind of did that to each other quite a bit. And in a way, the struggle that we had throughout, not just the feature, was also the reality of like running the company. We couldn't 100% focus on just the feature. So while we're struggling with the story of Damn Give a Feature, every day we're trying to figure out, cash flow and financial situations, which is very much of something that we chose to face, but we never had to deal with before. And the pressure of like running this place, financially, is also kind of putting a lot of weight on our shoulders, good and bad. Like, because of that, I think when we came out of that kind of darkness, it feels so good. Like, it feels like, oh my God, we can do this. We can really do this. When we worked at the last draft of the feature, I felt like we could do this. We didn't think we could before we came out of it, but when we came out of it, we're like, yeah, this is it. Like, we just have to kind of endure this hardship and struggle. We can never give up,
I think one interesting thing about, I think a lot of Tonko House, I think Dice and I get a lot of attention for Tonko House and everything. And Tonko House really is a company. It's a studio. There's a lot of people here. Not a lot of people, but there's a lot more than just Dice and I. One of the critical points for me this year was actually, running a business is the aspect of being an artist that I have very little training in, very little kind of understanding of. Working with, our other partner Zen, there was a point this year where all of us would, we spend our Saturdays kind of working in management and really taking a look at the leadership and some of the bigger decisions that need to be made for the company. And every Saturday we were starting to really hit our head against a wall. The kind of financial planning of the company and taking a look at the structure of our leadership and how all of that works together was really starting to come to a point where I think all of us, as much as we enjoy each other's company, was starting to really become a bit mangled, a bit tortured. And I remember there's a point where kind of Zen was like, I've got to go to Japan because, he had to go take care of a bunch of things. And then and we were just kind of left in a state of like not quite having a firm direction as to how to run this company in a way or how to make these bigger decisions. And I just remember there was a moment that when Zen came back, it was like he came off the hill and had these tablets and was like, you know what, I have an idea, and I think this is the way that we can start to structure things and start to organize information and start to structure ourselves. And it was just such a like turning point for me, at least, where I know creatively we were struggling, but also in terms of leadership we were struggling. And I think one thing I feel like is, when you hit these periods of darkness, is that the nice thing about having a group of people is that when you can no longer function because that kind of darkness overwhelms you, inevitably what's nice is that it feels like someone picks up, So even if I feel like in a way I've hit a point where I can't go any further and I've almost to the point of giving up, someone else will pick up and run. And I think, in the business sense of things, I really think this year, Zen really picked up and started running with things. On the creative aspect, I think, Dice and I back and forth trying to move this thing forward. But I think that's where, having to admit that you needed help is a difficult thing for, especially the three partners who tend to be pretty independent, I think, like to think of themselves as independent. The kind of reliance on each other is both strength, but also you have to face the fact that you're not strong enough to do it on your own. And I think, and I think that this year, fortunately and unfortunately, those things happened. And we're still here. Tonko House is still here.
Yeah, I agree. That's the biggest lesson that I learned last year. That how we can kind of rely on each other. I remember, a couple moments like really like, I felt like I got so much problem, and like I got tangled with so many different things, and I'm like, and just kind of simply like put it like, I'm like, oh, I need help, just kind of like simply like put that out there, and it got accepted, by the partners, and someone like Courtney and all that. It's just like that was the kind of biggest gain. How we would kind of we went like one step ahead to kind of support each other, and that is the biggest gain for me, I feel like. And also, I want to say a little bit about the communication and feedback from the fans. That it's kind of big part of, that gave me a lot of encouragement. Like when we did events in Japan, in Tonko House Exhibition in Ishinomaki, and we did a couple events in Tokyo. And also some, events like we did the screening. I wasn't able to attend CTN this year, but all those kind of point where we meet fans, and doesn't matter where we are, like internally how we are feeling and all that. Like we can get that kind of like, oh, I'm so excited about your work and all that. That always gives me that kind of point where that's great that the people are kind of feeling those kind of values throughout the work that we are creating, and that is always give me those kind of encouragement.
So speaking again back about feature, we are partnered with Fox, and there was this big announcement of this potential Disney buyout of Fox. Just for our fans' sake, where are we with that, and how does that affect, the feature moving forward?
What's really interesting about working with a big studio like 20th Century Fox, especially last year, we went through some big changes, including Disney merger. At times was frustrating because we just couldn't do anything about it. But again, we shouldn't be frustrated because there's nothing we could do about it. And luckily, for now, there's really no effect on our project. The only thing we can do is to just make as good of a project as possible. That's the only way to keep moving forward, whether it's distributed by 20th Century Fox or Walt Disney Company. Hopefully it doesn't affect us. Obviously Disney is a very familiar company for us, so a lot of us at least, and so far nothing is affecting us as far as I know.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I'm sure just like anything, there are challenges that are ahead of us. And if anything, I think this journey has really taught us that you've got to just roll with the punches. And I'm sure there'll be good things, I'm sure there'll be bad things, but all we can really do is make a stellar project. And I think that's what's going to be bulletproof through any changes, is a really great project. And that's what we work towards, and that's what we strive for, because I think that will be universal. So, I think in a way we're trying not to focus on the things that we can't affect, because it's not healthy,
Yeah.
And there's good people there. There's good people at both companies. So,
So one comment that we get often is, do we have any plans to do any projects outside the world of the Dam Keeper?
Yeah, of course. I mean, of course. Yeah, I mean, we love telling stories. We love creating things, and we've got sketchbooks and ideas all over the place. But yeah, I think very soon, very quickly, there are several projects on the horizon that we really can't talk about, but are very exciting. New worlds, new characters. Real partners that are involved that want to make these things, and we're looking to we're growing, which is a good thing, because I feel like if you're not growing, you're going the opposite direction. There's no real status quo, and so absolutely, we have great new things, and as always, we use our exhibitions to usually give a little peek into these things, as I'm sure will be the case this year. Yeah, social media, those are just the very tip of the iceberg. I really think we're super excited about the other projects that we have going on, and cannot wait to start to share them both through books or film or series, serial work, animation, illustration, social media. We've got so much planned for this year that I just I don't know how we're all going to get it all done, but I'm sure that you and Zen will figure it out.
Thanks, Robert.
Well, I gotta say, really, that's the outcome of this, the year of struggle that we talked about, is because of that, some of the things that we had to endure, and we were so appreciative of like how everybody contributed to kind of this company's growth last year, and then towards the end of last year, so many opportunities start to just surface to us, and we have had new ideas, but not like we were actively working on it. And then from outside partners, there are like a lot of interest in just working on a lot of these projects that we had in our back pocket, and also new ideas that kind of these opportunities forced us to come up with, and that's really because of some of the struggles and challenges that we kind of overcame last year. I mean, just kind of going back to the Downkeeper Poems production, it was hard for all of us because it was really our first time dealing with entire package of this whole show from the very beginning to the very end, including promotion. Everything was done by us, and I feel like we're kind of confident to take on another one because now we've done it, and we know we can do certain things better. We know we can maybe experiment certain things differently, and that's a strength. That's a treasure that we kind of found last year.
So to end our TONKOCAST, I ask each of you guys to talk about one moment in 2017. If it's ugly, beautiful, funny, lots of funny moments, happy, just it doesn't have to be your best moment of 2017, but just one moment you would love to share with everybody.
So here's a small one. We have our editor here, Anna, works at a restaurant, a local restaurant, a Japanese restaurant close by. And we found out, because of connections and friends, that her nickname at the restaurant is Ochoko, right? And Ochoko, I don't know what that means, but we talked about it. Ochoko is kind of a klutz, or clumsy a little bit, right? And right away I was like, wait a second, Anna's not an Ochoko compared to some of the individuals we have within Tonko House. And so we got to talking about it, and this kind of term is Ochoko Choi, which is someone who's very clumsy, I guess. So we took a very quick poll of who we thought was the most clumsy. There was a unanimous vote as to who the king of clumsiness was.
I don't know if it was unanimous.
In my head it was.
No, I think there was one person who was not.
You're right. There was one person who was resistant to this idea, who was our fearless leader, Dice. But so to prove out whether or not this was in fact true, and whether or not we were overall a clumsy studio, we have this little piggy bank. Literally, it's a painted pig bank that we have at the studio, that every time someone does an Ochoko Choi, has an Ochoko Choi moment, a clumsy moment, they've got to put a quarter in the jar.
Right.
And what's interesting about this jar is that in the beginning it started to get heavier and heavier, but at a certain point it actually started to get lighter and lighter. And I didn't understand why, but come to realize that the quarters are now being replaced by dollars. There's a significant amount of money in the jar, and so far, and of course we've just begun this, but so far it is true that Dice is leading the Ochoko Choi count.
Yes.
By a significant margin.
No, we're pretty close. I think Courtney and I are very close. And Eric,
you're right.
Eric is actually
right, because Eric's
much
been
more
gone.
clumsy than me, but then he's just not here. he works outside and
But he texts me when he has a chocochoy moments at home.
is it counting in Korea right now? I want to make sure.
I don't know. We have to have the truth.
And you know, some of the new hires a very chocochoy, and I'm very excited about that.
Yes, it is something where if there is a
That's
moment,
a memorable moment of 17.
That's one.
That's one.
So,
okay.
Another moment, you know, this year we were very fortunate to have our second exhibition in Ishinomaki. Ishinomaki is about a 4-hour train ride from Tokyo up north. And we were looking at train schedules and all sorts of different things. And Dice had come up with this idea that he had told me, you know, the best way to travel is by bus. And I said, what? And he said, they have this like sleeping bus. This sleeping bus in which you can ride through the night, and it's so comfortable, it's so amazing. We should do that. And I said, it sounds great. It sounds like one of those experiences that will enrich my life. And so I was excited about this. I remember going to dinner with partners and other people in Japan, and every time we had dinner, I would bring this up, like, oh, we're going to take this night bus. And the consistent response I got was this word, majide?
Oh, yeah?
Which means, seriously? And so I just remember, like, the night of taking the bus. It's like 11 o'clock at night. We're at the bus station. This bus pulls up, and it is like this amazing bus that has like all this, like these little compartments and all this. I'm looking in the door. I'm like, wow, like Dice, you know, for everyone giving him a little bit of fluff about taking this bus, it looks pretty glamorous. Only to find out that wasn't our bus. It was like a cartoon where that bus pulled out and this other bus pulled in, and all it was reclinable chairs. And we sat in the back of this stuffy bus. It was so uncomfortable. I barely slept. It was hard to breathe. It felt like there was no air in there. And we arrived at like
5 in the morning.
5 in the morning in the middle of Ishinomaki on this corner waiting. And what was incredible, this story has a great ending to me. Like, what was incredible is this little van pulls up full of like energy. Like, all these individuals come pouring out, and they're like, Dice, Robert, come with us. And so they were these individuals that we had been talking to that run a nonprofit out in Ishinomaki. And their whole thing is kind of education and growth, stimulating. Ishinomaki is one of the most heavily affected it is the most heavily affected city by the 2011 earthquake. And so they faced a lot of horrific devastation. And so this nonprofit was there to help rebuild the city in a way. And so these people all piled into this van, piled us in, all this energy, and they're like, we're going to take you to the house that we stay at. And so we were like, whoa, like all of you stay there? There's about 3 people in the van. All of you stay there? And they're like, oh, yeah. And so we pull up to this house. It's kind of this, I don't know, in my eyes, it's like this classic house. It's got a sliding door. You slide it open, and Japanese house and tatami mats and everything. You walk in, and we're in this room that's like a living room. And the 3 people are like, oh, we've made breakfast. They had this hot kind of Japanese breakfast waiting for us. But the weird part was people kept coming out. Like every door would slide open, and there'd be one more person, then one more person. And in the end, I think there was like 7 people there. And they were all just living in this house. And the thing that was amazing is that the thing that kept all of them there, they all work together, they all live together, they eat together, and they're all there to help rebuild the city. Most of them were not from Ishinomaki. They were from outside cities who were now living together in what I would say was a pretty tough living situation, but incredibly upbeat. And then we spent the day looking at some of the work they do and some of the things that they were hoping for, and really pointing out how the city has grown since the tidal wave came in and really wiped out the city. And it was probably one of the most inspiring trips that I've ever been on, where I was able to see really the strength of people rebuilding a city, and really proud of Tonko House being able to be part of an exhibition in this city. It definitely wasn't the most... compared to Tokyo, we didn't have the volume of people that came through, but I gotta say that every person that was able to come in from outside of Ishinomaki, the meaning of that, I think, that Tonko House could bring outside people into Ishinomaki to come see our exhibition was really meaningful. And we met incredible people who ran the museum and the exhibition, and it really was kind of a memorable trip for me that I feel like forever changed, for me, the significance of what an exhibition could be. So I think moving forward, I think there's a lot more thought and a lot more feeling that goes into what this exhibition could be.
It was a roller coaster of experience.
Good stories. You have good stories. I don't know what to say. I thought about moments, but I don't know that I couldn't think of really those kind of colorful moments. I couldn't really think of the moments I thought about is more like some of the heavy conversation that we had, and sometimes towards the end of Saturday or something after 7-8, and sometimes two of us, and maybe Robert and I just stayed at in the studio, and we just kind of talk over all those kind of, what do we do now kind of moment. And I had those kind of conversations with Dice as well in a car. We usually drive together back home, and we kind of stay in front of Dice's house and for another 20 minutes, and we just kind of talk about what do you think? I mean, those kind of things, it's that happens all the time. But I think out of those small, sometimes hard conversations, there's a lot of awareness about how we function together and who we are, and those are the kind of it was a hard year, but journey is reward, and those are the kind of reward that I feel that I can experience every day.
I shared with you guys internally before is really last year's CTN. CTN happened. CTN is an animation industry's big event at the end of November. So it's really towards the end of the year, and we had our booth, and it was our 4th year at CTN, and then there was a moment towards the end of CTN after you guys had the Dam Keeper Poems screening. A lot of people came to our booth. Some of them are crying, and some of them are just wanted to talk to Eric and you and JJ and all you guys. And then I took a coffee break around that time, and then I was super excited that so many people loved the screenings. And I took a coffee break, and it was just CTN is so overwhelming at times. And then I was coming back to the booth, our booth, and then there's so many people around the booth. And Robert at the time was, I think, interviewing. You were out also, you were interviewing somebody. Zen didn't come to CTN. He was kind of holding the fort here in Berkeley. So partners, myself, Robert, Zen weren't at the booth, but the booth was run by the rest of you guys, and including some of our interns who are helping us run, and our friends and followers in the community were just surrounding the booth, and it didn't change anything. Everybody was just so excited to meet you guys, meet people at Tonko House, and just wanted to share their stories with Tonko House without myself or Robert or Zen. That moment really kind of stuck out to me, and I had to stop and just really felt that is the growth of our company. It is no longer ours. Ours meaning mine or Robert's or Zen's, because that's we started this company, and now it just really became this studio that belonged to many of us. It was almost a nice symbolic way to close the year for me, because again, last year was, while me and Robert struggled with the feature, there's so many other projects that went super successful, graphic novel or the DK poems or the exhibitions. Those projects are run mainly by other guys, So that is the big moment for me that really got me emotional and kind of gave me the confidence to move forward in 2018.
Well, thank you guys so much. Thank you for asking me to do this again this year. Thank you for last year.